silence creates more anxiety. When you're silent about what's going on, particularly internally, you create more anxiety. People have career anxiety. So leaders must be able to address concerns openly and often, communicate more often. In times of crisis, we must communicate more often, not less. I know it's tempting to go to a cocoon because we're also really trying to manage our own emotions, but that's when leaders are needed. That's when leaders must communicate more and not less. That's where we earn our money as leaders. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Organizational Behavior with Sipiwe Moyo. I'm back! I have a new book. I've written a new book. Look at this. So this is my new book called Building Better Workplaces, because work shouldn't be a drag, the ultimate guide. So this book is brand new from the box, as we say in South Africa, new release. It's easier to get it on Amazon for those who want, but I'm running team effectiveness sessions based on this book. So this book has like 40 lessons on how leaders can create a great environment for a great workplace, but it also has 40 lessons on how team members themselves can contribute to a great place. Because how many of us know leaders have a certain responsibility for creating a great workplace, but also leaders have a great responsibility. So I'm flying solo today. My last video, I was flying solo, and I thought, let me fly solo again because I have something to say. There's a South African broadcaster by the name of Professor J.J. Tabane who popularized this thing of having rants on TV. He would just sit here like this, no camera, no auto cue, no nothing, and just rant for a very long time. So this is my rant about building better workplaces. I wanted to chat about, I think, something I want to frame, like leading through the noise, building better workplaces in turbulent times, because I don't know about you. 2025 is shaping up to be a bumpy year. It is noisy. We're coming out of major election cycles in many countries in 2024. The US, South Africa has its own, I think Botswana, I think many countries all over the world have had elections, and it just turns out that it's going to be a very noisy year. I think if you look at the ongoing geopolitical tensions, if you look at some of the rapid technological changes, it's a mess. It's a mess. I think if, when the external environment is noisier than ever, with uncertainty around global markets and so on, how do you really lead in such a noisy environment? How do you get people to try and focus on what they can control? Because at the end of the day, we still need to perform at work. At the end of the day, we still need to bring the numbers. We still need to make sure that we perform. And so you look at these global political changes, global political challenges, but you also look at some of the things that are happening in locally. It's such a noisy time. So let's look at it this way: political uncertainty, right? Worldwide, we're coming out of these election cycles. There's geopolitical tensions, U.S.-China relations. I think last week or a few weeks ago, we had that conflict between U.S. President Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine. There's the Middle East, there's Russia-Ukraine conflict. Everything is just in a mess. When you look at South African challenges, we have our major challenges. We're hosting the G20, and mayor in Johannesburg has literally just said we are going to fix the roads for the G20. I'm like, how? So we fixed the roads for G20. So we must stay with those roads. So there's a whole lot of things going on. I think many of us are also panicking about the disruption brought to us by AI. But there's also an employee well-being and burnout crisis. Amid all of this, employees are feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling burned out, they're disengaged, there's mental health struggles. And how do you build a better workplaces with all of those things? So this will be a very short entry. I want to just give you some ideas. What am I thinking about when it comes to leading in such a noisy environment, as I call it? How does a noisy external environment impact employee morale? Some of the things we're interested in this show. How does it impact employee morale, productivity, and engagement? As you know, those are the things that we are really, really interested in this show, organizational behavior. So here are a few ideas. With the noise comes heightened anxiety and stress, right? Employees worry about their job security. They worry about political changes and economic downturns. And all of these leads to distraction. They lead to distractions. They reduce concentration. They reduce efficiency. When people are all, there's a phrase we use here in South Africa called skinnering, which is like, hey, did you hear Trump? Did you hear this? Did you hear this? All of those leads to many distractions, and because of that leads to inefficiency in the workplace. There's lack of focus, productivity drops. There's cynicism. There's a lot of cynicism that we're seeing in the market right now. People are cynical, you know. When you look at some of the things that are happening in South Africa right now, just like there's a lot of cynicism, there's negativity in the air. It's quite difficult to remain optimistic right now. There's disengagement. There's team tensions and conflicts. When there's noise outside of the environment, unfortunately, these spill into workplace relationship. They spill into some of our own relationship, increasing tensions, creating to misalignment. So leaders really need to be proactive in addressing some of these concerns. What can we do? And I'm not pretending to have solutions, but I thought, let me have my view. It's okay to have a view. Also human. So how can leaders help their teams remain focused during uncertainties? I think firstly is to make sure that we continue communicating the bigger picture. We have to make sure that we don't necessarily make false promises as if we can solve some of the problems that are happening in the external environment, but we need transparency where we can. We need to give people context where we can about what are we focused on as a team. We need to really implore employees to focus on what they can control. As leaders, we also have to try and focus on what we can control. I think a culture of resilience, big part of resilience is facing reality head on and making sure that we do not skirt around reality. We face reality skirt on, but with increased focus. We do not have to be distracted by all the things that are happening in the environment. I think many leaders really make mistakes about how we deal with some of these challenges. I think firstly, when we avoid having the tough conversations, I think silence creates more anxiety. When you're silent about what's going on, particularly internally, you create more anxiety. People have career anxiety. So leaders must be able to address concerns openly and often, communicate more often. In times of crisis, we must communicate more often, not less. I know it's tempting to go to a cocoon because we're also really trying to manage our own emotions, but that's when leaders are needed. That's when leaders must communicate more and not less. That's where we earn our money as leaders, And so what ends up doing is that now we ended up focusing only on survival. We are panic driven. Even our decisions are more filled with panic. But I don't think that's the posture that we need to have. I think there are so many opportunities that we can still pursue. We still can pursue more learning, more agility, and just churning out good products. If we're doing exciting things at work, focus more on the exciting things that we are doing rather than focusing on the external environment that is noisy, that is divisive, that is polarizing. If we focus on the things that we are doing that are more exciting, that would really, really help. And I think ignoring the employees' stress levels is also not going to help. So some of the things we spoke about in the last episodes around having a holistic view on well-being, having a proactive view of well-being. Burnout is real. Burnout is real, and leaders must be able to grapple with that emotional and mental well-being of their teams. I think, what you need is honesty, you need direction, and you need care. If you have to elicit the help of EAP programs, yes, we do. But remember, in the last episode, we spoke about how employee assistant programs are a reactive approach to well-being, that a proactive approach to well-being and a holistic approach to well-being might be beneficial at this stage. And encourage open conversations. Have conversations about what we are trying, the culture that we're trying to create, what are some of the barriers to the culture that we're trying to create an environment where people feel safe to express their concerns or sharing ideas. I won't use that word psychological safety. I think we're using it too much. And I think many leaders in particular do not have affinity to that word. It sounds very fluffy. It sounds very HR-y, organizational behavior, what. But I think you need people, you need a space where people can express their views. And I think you have to also try to provide stability where possible. I remember I had an interesting encounter with a leader of a mining company I was facilitating in, where there was a lot of changes and there was a lot of uncertainty. That's the kind of world that we live in. And staff members were asking him to provide a lot of clarity. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, one thing I can promise you is that I will always provide clarity about the things that I know. And if and when there are things that I know, but I'm not permitted to talk about them yet because maybe Exco is still grappling with those things, I'll be honest enough to come and say, hey guys, there are things that I know, but I'm not able to communicate. I'm not allowed to communicate. And that gives a sense of, okay, that's honest, that's transparent, that we're not able to talk about that yet. And I think that's quite helpful. And because sometimes people, all they need is to have a voice. When people feel like, when they feel heard, when they feel like there is an investment in them, they are also invested in the company's success, particularly in uncertain times. You can't ignore my own feelings and think that I'll be interested in what the company is doing as well. I hope that makes sense. So cutting through the noise and keeping the teams aligned is going to be one of our biggest challenges in 2025. It's going to be a very, very heavy challenge. And I have some views on how we can try and do that. I think, for example, the information overload. Try not to have this situation where we're overloading people. So we have to almost like, and I know I said we must communicate more, not less, but we also have to simplify our communication. We also have to prioritize and focus on execution. One of the quotes I love is the idea that we must plan light and execute heavy. And in these tough times, we must simplify, have 3 or 5 priorities. Be very clear about this is what we're trying to do. Focus on those things. I mean, if you have 17 priorities, we're not sure which ones to do. Too many shifting goals cause overwhelm, especially in these tough times where there is a bit of a cognitive overload, right? Cognitively, we're overloaded. So what you want to try and do is to simplify. Tell us what are the 3 to 5 things that we are doing so that we have that focus, and then communicate those frequently, communicate those concisely, paint a great picture that we're focusing on. And I talk a lot about what we call below the neck communication. This is not the time to be verbose and talk about complex things. Simplify, keep things as simple as possible, touch the heart, tell stories so that you can be able to reinforce our purpose. People need to feel connected to something bigger than themselves, something more meaningful. Even when the world is chaotic outside, we need an inspiration. We need a North Star. We need to be working towards something bigger than ourselves. And this is the time when leaders have to point people towards something bigger than themselves. That sense of transcendence, that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning is going to be very important in this particular time. So yeah, I think it's going to be noisy. And I think if I think about people who also watch this podcast, we have HR people in this podcast, we have leaders also. What roles can they play in shielding employees from some of these external stress? Firstly, you can't shield people, Shem. Forget. You can't shield people from some of the stresses that we are facing. All of us are going to face it head on. We do not skirt around it. We face it head on. But I think there are certain things that create a sense of coherence. That sense of they are stabilizers. They like if you have a good culture, it stabilizes you in the midst of the chaos. So chaos is not going to go away, but it can stabilize us. So focus on culture, focus on positive relationships, focus on engagement, focus on each other. We are going to ride this wave because we are stronger together. See what I did there? South Africa, we are stronger together. By the time this episode drops, I think I think anybody who knows me know I'm a fan of cricket. We would have played the semi-final at the Champions Trophy with I think we're playing New Zealand at the semi-final. Hopefully we would have won against New Zealand and would have won the final against India because we are stronger together. So I think that sense of being stronger together in the company, please don't take that thing for granted. It is so critical, but it must not be this false sense of togetherness that only happens when there's sports, when there's rugby, when there's cricket, when there's football. I think people are tired of those symbolic things of stronger together based on events. If we're going to be stronger together, we must be stronger together even in tough conversations, even in some of the things that are trying to divide us as a country. We must have those conversations, and it's very, very important. And those will happen if you continue focusing on fairness and inclusion. I know there's this noise now where Donald Trump is like, let's stop DEI. South Africa and many of our countries, we've worked so hard for many people to feel included, for many people to celebrate diversity, and we must not allow what is happening in the West, the pushbacks that we're seeing, to also, get us to stop some of the conversations that we've had around fairness and inclusion and communication and knowing each other and having each other's back. I think that's going to be very, very important. So this is a very short entry. I'm going to disrupt myself to check how far is 16 minutes. I think that's fine. I think that's okay. What can I say beyond 20 minutes, guys? So maybe just some final thoughts on leading through the noise. It's turbulent times. It is tough times. How do we lead through the noise? Maybe some final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up this episode. What can I say? Final thoughts? Do I have? I think I do. So focus on what you can control. Control what you can. The world is noisy, but leaders can control workplace by giving clarity, by focusing on culture, by focusing on communication. Focus on communication, focus on culture, focus on giving clarity where you can. And I think the idea of resilience and adaptability is going to be critical, but also leaders, you set the tone, right? So if we see you falling apart and not being resilient and adaptable, particularly in these tough times, there's a certain signal that you are setting. If you study things like emotional contagion, that emotions are contagious. If you give off nervous energy in the team right now, the team will be nervous. But you have to focus on things that matter. Focus on what we can control. Don't underestimate purpose. Keep pointing to that North Star. I think leaders who get this right won't just survive tough times. They will thrive during those tough times. It's one of those times where many of us who claim to be leaders, we're going to have to step up. We're going to have to step up and lead. When there's so much noise in the system, we're going to have to step up and lead. We're going to have to step up and provide that and take advantage of the moral void that is there right now and fill that space. Fill that space and be that voice that still tries to unite, being that voice that still tries to a dealer in hope and providing clarity and providing a sense of coherence in a noise in a very, very noisy environment. So I hope that helps, and I thought those will be my thoughts. Please comment, are there any other ideas that you have about leading through the noise, particularly in these tough times? I'm also very curious to hear from you whether you enjoy these solo episodes. I think I haven't done this in a long time, and so I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious about hearing my voice for like 20 minutes. I'm feeling very self-conscious. Please assure me. I'm vulnerable here. Please assure me in the comments. Tell me it was okay. Everybody, thanks for tuning into another episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. If you enjoyed this, please comment, share, like, and subscribe. See you next time. Dwede!